Chapter 5. The Rescue of the Tin Woodman. When Dorothy awoke, the sun was shining through the trees, and Toto had been long out chasing birds around her. There was the Scarecrow, still standing patiently in his corner, waiting for her. "We must go and search for water," she said to him. "Why do you want water?" he asked. "To wash my face clean after the dust of the road, and to drink, so the dry bread will not stick in my throat." "It must be inconvenient to be made of flesh," said the Scarecrow thoughtfully, "for you must sleep and eat and drink. However, you have brains, and it is a lot of bother to be able to think properly." They left the cottage and walked through the trees until they found a little spring of clear water, where Dorothy drank and bathed and ate her breakfast. She saw there was not much bread left in the basket, and the girl was thankful that the Scarecrow did not have to eat anything, for there was scarcely enough for herself and Toto for the day. When she finished her meal and was about to go back to the yellow brick road, she was startled to hear a deep groan nearby. "What was that?" she asked timidly. "I cannot imagine," replied the Scarecrow, "but we can go and see." Just then another groan reached their ears, and the sound seemed to come from behind them. They turned and walked through the forest a few steps when Dorothy discovered something shining in a ray of sunshine that fell between the trees. She ran to the place and then stopped short with a cry of surprise. One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it, with an uplifted axe in his hands, was a man made entirely out of tin. His head and arms and legs were jointed upon his body, but he stood perfectly motionless, as if he could not stir at all. Dorothy looked at him in amazement, and so did the Scarecrow, while Toto barked sharply and made a snap at his tin legs, which hurt his teeth. "Did you groan?" asked Dorothy. "Yes," answered the Tin Man. "I did, and I have been groaning for more than a year, and no one has ever heard me before or come to help." "What can I do for you?" she inquired softly, for she was moved by the sad voice in which the man spoke. "Get an oil can and oil my joints," he answered. "They are rusted so badly I cannot move them at all. If I am well oiled, I shall soon be all right again. You will find an oil can on a shelf in my cottage." Dorothy at once ran back to the cottage and found the oil can. When she returned, and asked anxiously, "Where are your joints?" "Oil my neck first," replied the Tin Man. So she oiled it. It was quite badly rusted. The Scarecrow took a hold of the tin head and moved it gently from side to side until it worked freely, and then the man could turn it himself. "Now, oil the joints in my arms," he said, and Dorothy oiled them, and the Scarecrow bent them carefully until they were quite free from the rust and as good as new. The Tin Woodman gave a sigh of satisfaction and lowered his axe, which leaned against a tree. "Ah, this is a great comfort," he said. "I have been holding that axe in the air ever since I was rusted, and now I'm able to put it down at last. Now, if you will, oil the joints of my legs, and I shall be right once more." So they oiled his legs until he could move them freely, and he thanked them again for his release, for he seemed a very polite creature and very grateful. "I might have stood there always if you have not come along," he said. "So you have certainly saved my life. How did you happen to be here?" "We're on our way to the Emerald City to see the Great Oz," she answered. "So we stopped at your cottage to pass the night." "Why do you wish to see Oz?" he asked. "I want him to send me back to Kansas, and the Scarecrow wants him to put a few brains into his head," she replied. The Tin Woodman appeared to think deeply for a moment and then said, "Do you suppose this Oz could give me a heart?" "Why, I guess so," Dorothy answered. "It would be as easy to give the Scarecrow brains." "Yes, true," the Tin Woodman returned. "So if you will allow me to join your party, I will also go to the Emerald City and ask Oz to help me." "Come along," the Scarecrow said heartily, and Dorothy added that she would be pleased to have his company. So the Tin Woodman shouldered his axe, and they all passed through the forest until they came to the road that was paved with yellow brick. The Tin Woodman had asked Dorothy to put the oil can in her basket. "For," he said, "if I shall get caught in the rain and rust again, I will need the oil can very badly." It was a bit of good luck that their new comrade to join the party, for soon after they had begun their journey they came to a place where the trees and branches grew so thick over the road that the travellers could not pass. But The Tin Woodman set to work with his axe and chops so well that soon there was a clear passage for the entire party. Dorothy was thinking so earnestly as they walked along that she did not notice while the Scarecrow stumbled into a hole and rolled over the side of the road. Indeed, he was obliged to call her help and up again. "Why didn't you walk around the hole?" asked Dorothy. "I don't know enough," replied the Scarecrow cheerfully. "My head is stuffed with straw, you know, and that is why I'm going to Oz to ask him for some brains." "Oh, I see," said the Tin Woodman. "But after all, brains are not the best thing in the world." "Have you any?" inquired the Scarecrow. "No, my head is quite empty," answered the Woodman. "But once I had brains and a heart also, so not having them both, I should much rather have a heart." "And, why is that?" asked the Scarecrow. "I will tell you my story, and then you shall know." So while they walked through the forest, the Tin Woodman told the following story. "I was born the son of a woodman who chopped down trees in the forest, sold the wood for a living. When I grew up, I too became a wood chopper, and after my father died, I took care of my old mother as long as she lived. Then I made up my mind that instead of living alone, I would marry, so that I might not become lonely. There was one of the Munchkin girls who was so beautiful that I once grew to love her with all of my heart. She, on part, promised to marry me as soon as I could earn enough money to build a better house for her, so I had to work harder than ever. But the girl lived with an old woman who did not want her to marry anyone, for she was so lazy she wished the girl to remain with her and do all the cooking and housework. So the woman went to the Wicked Witch of the East and promised her 2 sheep and cow if she would prevent the marriage. Thereupon the Wicked Witch enchanted my axe, and I was chopping away at my best for one day, for I was anxious to get the new house and my wife as soon as possible, and then the axe slipped all at once and cut off my leg. This at first seemed a great misfortune, for I knew a one-legged man could not do very well as a wood chopper. So I went to a tinsmith, and he had me make me a new leg out of tin. The legs worked very well. Once I was used to it, but my action angered the Wicked Witch of the East, for she had promised the old woman I should not marry the pretty Munchkin girl. When I began chopping, my axe soon slipped and cut off my right leg. Again, I went to the tinner, and he again made me a leg out of tin. After this, the enchanted axe cut off my arms, one after the other. But nothing daunted, I had them replaced with tin ones. The Wicked Witch made the axe slip and cut off my head. And at first I thought that was the end of me, but the tinner happened to come along and made me a new head out of tin. I thought I'd beaten the Wicked Witch then, and I worked harder than ever. But I little knew how cruel my enemy could be, for she had a new way to kill my love for the beautiful Munchkin maiden, and made my axe slip again, and cut right through my body, splitting me in 2 halves. Once more the tinner came to my help and made me a new body out of tin, fastening my arms and legs and head to it, by means of joints, so that I could move around as well as ever. But alas, I now have no heart, so I have lost all my love for the Munchkin girl, and did not care whether I married her or not. I suppose she is still living with that old woman, waiting for me to come after her. My body shone so brightly in the sun I felt very proud of it, and did not matter how now my axe slipped, for it could not cut me, and there was only one danger: my joints would rust, but I kept an oil can in my cottage and took care of myself whenever I needed it. However, there came a day when I forgot to do this, being caught in a rainstorm before I could not think of the danger if my joints had rusted. I was left to stand there in the woods until you came to help. It was a terrible thing to undergo, but during the years I stood there, I had time to think what the greatest loss of my life had been. It was my heart. While I was in love, I was the happiest man on earth, but no one can love who has not a heart, and so I'm resolved to ask Oz to give me one. If he does, I will go back to that beautiful Munchkin maiden and marry her. Both Dorothy and Scarecrow had greatly been interested in the story of the Tin Woodman, and now they knew why he was so anxious to get a new heart. "All the same," said the Scarecrow, "I shall ask for brains instead of a heart, for a fool would not know what to do with a heart if he had one." "Ah, I shall take the heart," returned the Tin Woodman, "for brains do not make one happy, and happiness is the best thing in the world." Dorothy did not say anything, for she was puzzled to know which of her friends was right, and she decided if she could only get back to Kansas and Aunt Em, it did not matter. So much as whether the Tin Man had no brains and the Scarecrow had no heart, or each got what he wanted. What worried her most was the bread was nearly gone, and another meal for herself and Toto would soon empty the basket. To be sure, neither the Woodman or Scarecrow ever ate anything, but she was not made of tin or straw, and she could not live unless she was fed.